I'm Stella, 34, and I never thought I'd see the day when my father would break a promise to my mom. She was a brilliant architect who built our family home from scratch, every beam and window placement a reflection of her love for us. When cancer took her 5 years ago, Dad vowed to keep her creation standing. Yet last month, I arrived to find a sold sign on our lawn. His words still sting, "Family first, Stella, we need the money." If you're watching this, please share where you're tuning in from and hit that subscribe button before I tell you how I fought for my mother's legacy. My mother, Margaret, wasn't just any architect. She was a force of nature who carved her path through a profession that wasn't always welcoming to women in the 90s. Every rejected design made her more determined, every dismissive comment from male colleagues fueled her creativity. I spent my childhood watching her at the drafting table, her fingers moving with such purpose as she created homes for other families while dreaming of the day she would design one for us. She met my father, David, at a construction site where she was struggling to get the foreman to take her design specifications seriously. Dad was a structural engineer consulting on the project, and he stepped in when he overheard the foreman suggesting simplifications to her intricate window designs. "The integrity of that window wall is exactly as it should be," he had said, backing up her calculations without even knowing her. Mom always said that was the moment she knew he was different from other men in the industry. Their romance blossomed over blueprint discussions and site visits. Dad saw what others missed about her talent. He understood the mathematical precision behind her seemingly impossible angles and the psychological thought that went into every space she created. He became her biggest champion, and within 2 years, they were married. For 10 years, they saved every penny while Mom designed other people's dream homes. At night, she would sketch ideas for our house, filing them away in a portfolio that grew thicker each year. "Every home I design teaches me something new that will make ours perfect," she would tell me as I watched her work. When I was 12, they finally purchased 3 acres of land overlooking a small lake. The property had challenging terrain that most developers avoided, but Mom saw possibilities where others saw problems. "The difficulty of this land will make the achievement that much sweeter," she said as we stood on the rocky slope. The building process took nearly 5 years. Mom refused to compromise on materials or rush any stage of construction. Dad supported her vision, completely working overtime to fund special orders and custom features. I remember weekend trips to salvage yards where Mom would find century-old doors or vintage stained glass that she would incorporate into modern spaces. What emerged was unlike any house in our town. The 3-story structure followed the natural contours of the land, with floor-to-ceiling windows capturing the lake view from every angle. The exterior combined natural stone quarried from our own property with sustainable cedar siding that would silver beautifully with age. Inside, every space held purpose. My reading nook featured a skylight positioned to cast perfect reading light from noon until sunset, with built-in bookshelves that followed the curve of the wall. Dad's workshop in the basement had specialized ventilation and sound dampening, so he could work without disturbing the rest of the house. Mom's studio occupied the top floor corner, with windows on 2 sides, providing the Northlight Artist Prize while offering views of both the lake and the forest behind us. The kitchen became the heart of our home, with an island big enough for homework dinner prep and Mom's occasional blueprint reviews all happening simultaneously. She designed a table nook surrounded by windows that made it feel like we were dining in the treetops. Our neighbors were in awe of the completed home. Architecture students from the nearby university sometimes drove by to take photos. But for us, it wasn't a showpiece. It was simply home. Every nail and board had been selected with care, every space designed to nurture our family. For Mom, the house represented more than shelter. It was her masterpiece, the physical embodiment of her love for Dad and me. "Buildings outlive their architects," she often said. "This house is my way of hugging you long after I'm gone." I never realized how prophetic those words would become. Every corner of that house held memories of her strong hands guiding mine as we planted the garden, her laughter echoing in the vaulted living room, her silhouette against the windows as she stood contemplating the view. The house wasn't just where we lived, it was her greatest achievement, a legacy written in cedar and stone. The word cancer crashed into our lives when I was 22, halfway through my photography degree. Mom had been feeling tired, but we all assumed it was from overwork on a challenging commercial project. When persistent pain sent her to the doctor, the diagnosis was swift and merciless stage 3 pancreatic cancer. I immediately took a leave of absence from college, moving back into my childhood bedroom to help Dad care for her. The house that Mom had designed to capture joy now witnessed our collective sorrow, though its thoughtful spaces proved perfect for this unexpected chapter of our lives. The wide hallways easily accommodated the wheelchair she eventually needed. The master bathroom she had designed with a spacious shower became invaluable when she grew too weak to manage alone. Even the sunken living room, with its stepped approach, provided natural seating for the stream of visitors who came to offer support. During those difficult months, the kitchen island where we had once shared casual family meals became command central for tracking medications, appointments, and treatment options. Dad and I took turns sleeping on the window seat Mom had built in the main bedroom, so someone was always within reach if she needed help during the night. Despite her declining strength, Mom found ways to appreciate the home she had created. On good days, we would help her to the back porch where she could watch the garden she had planted. "I'm glad I chose perennials," she joked weakly. "They come back without any effort, which suits my energy level these days." During her more lucid moments between pain medications, Mom would point out design details I had never noticed before. The slight angle of the hallway walls that subtly guided visitors toward the social spaces. The way certain windows were positioned to capture seasonal light differences. The acoustic properties of the living room that allowed conversation to flow naturally without echoing. "I built surprises into this house that you'll still be discovering decades from now," she told me one evening as we watched the sunset from her favorite window seat. "When you notice something new, that will be me saying hello." As her condition worsened, the medical bills mounted. Insurance covered much of her treatment, but the experimental therapies she wanted to try came with enormous out-of-pocket costs. I remember finding Dad at the dining table late one night, surrounded by paperwork, his calculator, and a nearly empty bottle of whiskey beside him. "We'll figure it out," he assured me when I asked how bad things were. "Your mother's life is worth any cost." He never let Mom see his worry, maintaining an optimistic front even as certified letters from the bank began arriving. 3 months before she died, during a rare period of clarity, Mom called Dad to her bedside while she thought I was out running errands. I returned quietly, overhearing their conversation from the hallway. "Promise me 2 things, David," Mom said, her voice thin but determined. "Take care of our Stella, keep our family together no matter what happens, and keep this house for her. It's my heart in physical form. Every beam and board holds our family history." Dad's voice broke as he replied, "I promise, Margaret, this house will stay in our family as long as I live." I slipped away before they could discover me eavesdropping that promise lodging in my heart like a cornerstone. In her final weeks, Mom spent most of her time in the master bedroom. Dad moved her bed near the east-facing windows so she could watch the sunrise. He brought flowers from her garden and arranged them where she could see them from her pillow. The home health nurse commented that she had never seen a house so perfectly designed for end-of-life care, though of course Mom could never have anticipated this use of her creation. When Mom passed, it was during a brilliant sunset that flooded her room with golden light. Dad and I were holding her hands, the 3 of us together in the home she had created from nothing but imagination and determination. We held her funeral in the backyard garden. It seemed wrong to take her anywhere else when she had poured so much of herself into this place. Friends and colleagues filled the terraced garden she had designed, sharing stories of her brilliance, kindness, and the beautiful spaces she had created throughout her career. In the months that followed, the house became both comfort and torment. Every room held echoes of Mom, from the slight scuff on the kitchen counter, where she had dropped a cast-iron pan, to the pencil marks on the inside of the studio closet where she had recorded my height through childhood. Dad and I moved through these spaces like ghosts ourselves, finding both solace and fresh grief in the details she had created with such love. 5 years passed in a blur of gradual adjustment to life without Mom. I eventually finished my degree and established myself as a commercial photographer in the city, about an hour from our family home. I couldn't bear to stray too far, visiting Dad at least monthly to check on him and the house that still felt as much a part of our family as any living person. Each visit followed a similar pattern. I would arrive bearing groceries and take inventory of what needed attention around the property. The garden had simplified significantly. Mom's elaborate perennial beds slowly giving way to more manageable shrubs and ground covers as Dad struggled to maintain her vision. The exterior cedar siding required regular treatment to maintain its integrity, a task that increasingly fell to me as Dad's arthritis made climbing ladders dangerous. Inside the house remained largely as Mom had left it. Her collection of architectural books still arranged on the living room shelves. Her favorite ceramic mug still hanging on its designated hook in the kitchen. Dad seemed to find comfort in this preservation, though I noticed he had converted her studio into something of a shrine, rarely entering the space, except to dust her drafting table and adjust the curtains. What I failed to notice was how the strain of maintaining the property was affecting Dad physically and financially. At 67, he had taken early retirement from his engineering firm, his pension reduced accordingly. The economic downturn had impacted his investments, though he never discussed finances with me. The neighborhood had changed dramatically in the years following Mom's death. What had once been a quiet area of custom homes on large lots was becoming increasingly developed. A luxury housing community had broken ground just a mile away, bringing higher property taxes as our assessment value increased. The maintenance costs of a unique architect-designed home proved substantial. The custom windows Mom had specified required specialized service when seals failed. The heating system with its multiple zones needed professional attention each winter. Even the distinctive roof lines created drainage challenges that required regular gutter work. During my monthly visits, I occasionally noticed past due notices among Dad's mail or heard him on the phone negotiating payment extensions, but I was so focused on preserving Mom's memory through the physical structure that I missed the growing financial crisis. The Thompson place sold for nearly $1 million, Dad mentioned casually during one of my visits, referring to our neighbors of 20 years who had recently downsized to a condo. "That's crazy," I replied, not thinking much of it. "Their house isn't nearly as special as ours." Dad nodded silently, looking out at the property with an expression I couldn't quite read. Real estate agents began leaving their cards in our mailbox, or sometimes even stopping by when they saw me working in the yard. "Your property would move in a heartbeat," one particularly persistent woman told me. "Lakefront lots with this acreage simply don't exist anymore in this area." I always sent them away with a firm, "We're not interested," never bothering to mention their inquiries to Dad. Our home wasn't a commodity to be sold. It was Mom's legacy, the physical embodiment of her love and creative vision. The thought of strangers living in her masterpiece felt like a second death, an erasure of her existence. "Everything okay with money, Dad?" I asked once when I noticed him studying a property tax assessment with a furrowed brow. "Just the usual retirement juggling," he answered with a dismissive wave. "Nothing for you to worry about." I accepted his assurance too easily, eager to believe everything was fine. After all, he had promised Mom we would keep the house. That promise seemed unbreakable, a final act of devotion to her memory. What I didn't know was that Dad had been silently drowning in debt for years. The second mortgage he had taken out to pay for Mom's experimental treatments had ballooned with interest. Property taxes had nearly doubled as the area became more desirable. Insurance on the unique structure cost triple what neighboring conventional homes paid. Dad had been selling off his personal possessions gradually, a vintage watch collection, his cherished vinyl records, even his golf clubs to keep up with the most pressing bills. He skipped maintenance on his aging car and cut corners on his own medical care to maintain Mom's house as she would have wanted it. All while I remained blissfully, willfully ignorant, assuming we would keep Mom's creation in the family forever, just as promised. The crisp October day that shattered my world started normally enough. I drove out for my monthly visit, planning to help Dad clean the gutters before winter set in. As I turned onto our street, something red caught my eye in the front yard. Drawing closer, disbelief turned to horror as the sold sign came into focus, the real estate agent's smiling photo seeming to mock me from beneath our street address. I nearly crashed into the mailbox, slamming on my brakes and abandoning my car half in the driveway. The front door was unlocked as always, and I burst into the foyer, calling for my father with panic rising in my throat. I found him in the kitchen, calmly making coffee as if he hadn't just detonated a bomb in our lives. "What have you done?" My voice emerged as a whisper, then rose to a shout. "What have you done?" Dad turned slowly, unsurprised by my reaction. He looked older than I had ever seen him, his shoulders curled forward under an invisible weight. "I sold the house, Stella. We close next month." "You can't. You promised Mom." I was shaking, gripping the edge of the kitchen island she had designed to keep from collapsing. "How could you sell her house without even talking to me?" Dad pushed a mug of coffee toward me, which I ignored. "Sit down, please. Let me explain." "There's nothing to explain." My voice echoed off the vaulted ceiling. "You promised her you would keep this house in the family. I heard you make that promise." Dad's expression shifted from resignation to surprise. "You heard that conversation." "Yes, 3 months before she died. You promised her this house would stay in our family as long as you lived. Those were your exact words." He sighed heavily, lowering himself into a chair at the breakfast nook. "Then you didn't hear the conversation we had 2 weeks later, when her doctor told us the cancer had spread to her brain." My anger faltered momentarily. "What conversation?" "Sit down, Stella. Please." I remained standing, too agitated to sit, but fell silent. "Your mother made me promise to keep the house, yes. But after we learned the treatments weren't working, she released me from that promise." Dad's voice grew hoarse. "She said, 'Family first, David. If keeping this house becomes a financial burden that hurts you, or Stella, let it go. The memories will come with you.'" "I don't believe you," I said, though without conviction. It sounded exactly like something Mom would say. Dad reached for his wallet, extracting a folded piece of paper that had clearly been handled many times. She wrote it down because she was worried the medications were affecting her memory. She wanted me to have it in writing so I wouldn't feel guilty. I reluctantly took the note, recognizing Mom's handwriting, despite its uncharacteristic shakiness. The date at the top confirmed it had been written during her final decline. "Why didn't you ever tell me about this?" I asked, the paper trembling in my hand. "Because I intended to keep the original promise as long as I possibly could." Dad's eyes filled with tears. "I've been trying, Stella. For 5 years, I've been trying to keep her dream alive for you." "But why now? Why not talk to me first?" The betrayal still stung sharply, even with this new context. Dad gestured toward a stack of papers on the counter I hadn't noticed when I first stormed in. "Because I'm out of options. The property taxes increased again last month. The insurance company is requiring a full roof replacement by year end that I can't afford. And I haven't told you, but I need knee replacement surgery that I've been postponing because of the cost." I leafed through the papers with growing horror: bank notices, medical bills, insurance requirements, tax assessments. The numbers were staggering. Why didn't you tell me things were this bad I could have helped? Dad shook his head firmly. With what, Stella? Your photography business is just getting established. I wasn't going to saddle you with my financial problems. But this is Mom's house, I protested, emotion overwhelming logic. We can't just let strangers live here. Family first, Dad said quietly. That's what your mother always believed. Not the building, but the people. We need this money to secure our future, my retirement, your inheritance eventually. That's what matters, not the physical structure. But every inch of this place was designed by her. It's all we have left. Tears were flowing freely down my face now. The family who bought it, the Harpers, they're good people. Dad's tone gentled. Lisa Harper is actually an admirer of your mother's work. She's an architect herself, specializing in sustainable design. When she found out who had designed this house, she told me it was like finding out her dream home was for sale. So you're replacing Mom's family with some random architect woman who's a fan. The bitterness in my voice was undisguised. They have 2 young children, Stella. This house deserves to have children growing up in it again, discovering all the special features your mother built in. It's been half empty for too long with just an old man rattling around in it. I couldn't bear to hear any more. You've already made the decision without me. I guess there's nothing left to say. I grabbed my car keys and fled, ignoring Dad calling after me. In my car, parked crookedly in the driveway, I finally gave in to the sobs that had been building. Through my tears, I looked up at the house my mother had created out of nothing but love and vision. The thought of never again being able to walk through its rooms to touch the walls she had designed felt like losing her all over again. I started the engine with a sudden determination. There had to be a way to stop this. I would find it, whatever it took. The next 3 weeks became a desperate race against time. I was determined to prevent the sale by any means necessary, launching into action with the single-minded focus of someone fighting for a loved one's life. My first stop was the bank where I had my photography business account. The loan officer was sympathetic but direct. Based on your income and assets, the maximum home loan you could qualify for would be about 1/3 of what your father's house is worth in the current market. I approached 3 other banks with the same result. Even liquidating every asset I had would only be a drop in the bucket toward the purchase price. The house that had been such a labor of love for my parents had appreciated dramatically in value, putting it far beyond my financial reach. Next, I consulted a real estate attorney about my legal options. Her assessment was blunt and discouraging. Your name isn't on the deed, correct? She asked, reviewing the documents I had brought. No, it's only in my father's name. My mother passed away 5 years ago. And there was no provision in your mother's will specifically addressing the disposition of the house. She trusted my father to honor his promise, I replied, hearing how naive that sounded as the words left my mouth. The attorney leaned back in her chair. Then legally, your father has every right to sell the property. As his adult child, you have no legal standing to prevent the sale. I'm sorry. Undeterred, I tried a different angle. I contacted the local Historical Preservation Society, arguing that my mother's unique architectural design deserved protection. Their representative came to tour the house, expressing genuine appreciation for its innovative features. It's a remarkable home, he acknowledged, but at only 20 years old, it doesn't qualify for historical designation under our guidelines. Buildings typically need to be at least 50 years old or associated with significant historical events. But my mother was one of the few successful female architects of her generation in this region, I protested. Doesn't that count for something? I understand your emotional attachment, he said kindly. But we have very specific criteria we must follow. I suggest documenting the house thoroughly for architectural archives instead. Taking that suggestion to heart, I spent every available moment photographing every inch of the house. I cataloged each custom feature, each thoughtful detail my mother had incorporated. Dad watched my frantic documentation with a mixture of sadness and resignation, occasionally offering context about why Mom had made certain design choices. The angle of this hallway was calculated to frame the view of the oak tree when you enter from the foyer, he explained as I photographed the subtle curve of the wall. She spent 3 days adjusting the plans to get it exactly right. During one of these sessions, I persuaded Dad to appear on video explaining some of the home's unique features. Though reluctant at first, he gradually warmed to the task, his engineer's precision complementing his deep understanding of Mom's intentions. The southern exposure windows have a different glazing than the northern ones, he explained to my camera. Margaret calculated the seasonal sun angles and specified materials accordingly to maximize natural heating in winter while minimizing heat gain in summer. These recording sessions created an uneasy truce between us, though the undercurrent of tension remained. Dad was patient with my documentation project, but firm about the sale proceeding. I was civil but cold, still feeling betrayed, despite understanding his reasons. Meanwhile, I created an online petition titled Save an Architectural Gem, sharing photos of the house and the story of my mother's vision. While it garnered sympathetic comments, the signatures came nowhere near my goal of generating community pressure to stop the sale. My boss at the photography studio became increasingly concerned as I requested more time off and my work quality suffered. Whatever's going on in your personal life, you need to find a way to compartmentalize, she warned after I missed a deadline for an important client. Friends who initially offered support began suggesting I accept the inevitable. "It's just a house, Stella," my best friend Jamie said gently after listening to another tearful phone call. "The memories will stay with you no matter where you live." "It's not just a house," I snapped. "Every inch of it contains a piece of my mother. Strangers can't possibly understand or appreciate what went into creating it." I even approached my father's oldest friends, hoping they might intervene on my behalf. George, who had known my parents since before I was born, listened sympathetically before responding. "Your father has been drowning Stella. He's been too proud to tell you how bad things have gotten. Last winter, he was keeping the thermostat at 55 degrees to save on heating costs. He's been skipping meals when he thinks no one will notice. This sale isn't a betrayal of your mother, it's a necessity for his survival." As the closing date approached, my desperation increased. I considered extreme measures like taking out high-interest loans or launching a crowdfunding campaign to buy the house myself. I researched whether the house could qualify for some kind of architectural award that might prevent its sale. I even fantasized about finding problems during the inspection that would cause the buyers to back out. But as the days passed, I began to notice concerning changes in my father. The stress of our conflict was taking a visible toll. He looked haggard, his normally immaculate appearance slipping. When I arrived unannounced one evening, I found him asleep in his chair, surrounded by unpaid bills and untouched TV dinner on the side table. The sight gave me pause. In my single-minded focus on saving the house, had I been blind to what was happening to the living person who mattered most to me? The buyers. The Harpers had requested another walkthrough before closing. Dad asked if I would mind making myself scarce for their visit, probably fearing I would say something to jeopardize the sale. I agreed, but instead of leaving entirely, I parked down the street and watched them arrive. Lisa Harper was a tall woman with a purposeful stride that reminded me painfully of my mother. Her husband corralled their 2 children, a girl about 8 and a boy, maybe 5, as they tumbled excitedly from their SUV. The children raced to the front door, clearly already feeling proprietary about their future home. Through the large living room windows, I could see them moving through the house. Lisa taking notes, her husband measuring spaces, the children darting from room to room with the unrestrained energy of youth. Even from a distance, their enthusiasm was evident. This wasn't a family looking to flip the property or tear it down. They genuinely loved the house my mother had created. As they were leaving, I saw Lisa shake my father's hand with obvious respect, then impulsively give him a hug. The gesture brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Perhaps these weren't just random strangers after all, but people who could truly appreciate Mom's vision. I sat in my car long after they had gone, a slow realization dawning. Was I fighting to preserve my mother's legacy, or was I simply refusing to face another loss? Had the house become a physical substitute for Mom herself, something I could see and touch when I couldn't touch her? For the first time since seeing that sold sign, I forced myself to consider that letting go might be the right thing to do. The day after the Harpers' visit, I arrived at the house to find Dad in Mom's studio, a room he seldom entered. He was kneeling before her old flat file cabinet surrounded by drawing tubes and portfolios, tears streaming unchecked down his face. My anger dissolved at the sight of his vulnerability. I knelt beside him, placing a tentative hand on his shoulder. "Dad," he looked up, making no attempt to hide his tears. "I was trying to decide which of her drawings to keep and which to let go. There isn't room for all of them where I'm moving." The casual mention of his plans jolted me. "Where are you moving?" "Willow Creek Retirement Village. I've put down a deposit on a 2-bedroom unit." He gestured at a brochure on top of the flat file. "It's all I can manage, even with the proceeds from the house sale." I picked up the brochure, studying the modest apartment layouts. "But this is so small compared to here." "It's more than enough for one old man." Dad carefully rolled a blueprint, securing it with an elastic band. "The truth is, Stella, this house stopped being a home and became a museum after your mother died. We've been preserving it like a time capsule instead of living in it." His words struck uncomfortably close to my own recent thoughts. "When were you going to tell me about the retirement village?" "After the closing, when everything was settled." Dad sighed heavily. "I didn't want to give you one more thing to be upset about." I sat down on the floor beside him, suddenly exhausted by the weeks of fighting. "Why didn't you tell me how bad the financial situation was? All these years, I could have helped somehow." Dad looked at me with a sad smile. "What would you have done? Dropped out of college, given up your chance to build your career? Your mother would have hated that. She was so proud of your photography." "But the second mortgage, the medical bills, I had no idea." "That was deliberate, Stella. Your mother made me promise not to burden you with the financial details. She said, 'Let her remember me living, not what it cost at the end.'" He reached into the bottom drawer of the flat file and pulled out a thick folder of papers. "Here's everything. The experimental treatments, the home health care costs, the loan documents. I've been treading water ever since she died, but property taxes have nearly doubled in 5 years, and the maintenance costs for this place." I leafed through the papers, shocked by the amounts. Medical bills in the hundreds of thousands. A second mortgage that had started as a $200,000 line of credit but had grown with compounding interest. Tax assessments that had indeed nearly doubled as the area became more desirable. "Dad, this is overwhelming. How have you been managing it all?" He shrugged. "I sold most of my collectibles, took out a reverse mortgage last year, which just delayed the inevitable. Deferred maintenance where I could. But the house needs a new roof that I can't put off any longer, and my knee has gotten so bad I can barely manage the stairs." "Why didn't you at least tell me about your knee?" "Because you'd have insisted on helping, and you're just getting your business established. I won't be the father who drags his child down financially. That's not the legacy your mother and I wanted to leave you." I sat back against the wall, absorbing the magnitude of what he'd been silently enduring. "All this time, I thought you were betraying Mom's legacy by selling the house, but you were actually following her wishes to put family first." Dad nodded slowly. "The house was her creation, but you were her heart, Stella. When it came down to a choice between preserving the physical structure and ensuring your future wouldn't be burdened with my debts, there was no real decision to make." He reached into the portfolio beside him and extracted a sealed envelope with my name written in Mom's handwriting. "I found this when I was going through her papers after she died. I've been waiting for the right time to give it to you." With trembling fingers, I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter dated just weeks before Mom's death. "My darling Stella," it began. "If you're reading this, I'm gone, and you're facing changes. I won't be there to help you navigate. I've asked your father to give you this letter when you need it most." The handwriting was shaky, but determined, each word carefully formed, despite what must have been tremendous effort. "The house that I've built for our family represents my professional achievement, but you, my daughter, represent my heart's greatest work. Buildings, even ones created with love, are ultimately just structures. They can be photographed, remembered, and their influence can continue even if the physical form changes." Tears blurred my vision as I continued reading. "If circumstances ever require difficult choices about the house, please know that I release both you and your father from any obligation to maintain it. What matters is not the building, but the love and memories it contained, which you will carry with you always. Family first, my sweet girl. Not possessions, not buildings, not even dreams carved in wood and stone. People are what matter. Love your father. Build your own life. Create your own definition of home. And know that wherever you are, my love surrounds you as surely as the walls of this house once did." The letter was signed simply, "All my love, Mom." I looked up at Dad through my tears. She knew somehow. She knew this day might come. Dad nodded, his own eyes wet. "Your mother was always the wisest of us. She understood that life changes, circumstances change. She wouldn't have wanted us locked in the past, preserving a shrine at the cost of our future." For the first time, I truly saw what my obsession with keeping the house had cost, not just financially, but emotionally. While I had been fighting to preserve a physical structure, I had been damaging my relationship with my living father. "I'm so sorry, Dad," I whispered, reaching for his hand. "I've been selfish and blind." "No," he said firmly, squeezing my fingers. "You've been grieving. We both have in different ways. But maybe it's time we honor your mother by moving forward rather than looking back." As we sat together among the physical remnants of Mom's creative life, something shifted inside me. The house was her masterpiece, yes. But perhaps letting it go to a family who would love it, who would fill it with new life and laughter, was the best way to honor her memory. "Tell me about these Harpers again," I said finally. "You said the wife is an architect." Dad smiled, relief visible in his expression at my change of tone. "Lisa Harper. She actually attended a lecture your mother gave at the university 15 years ago. When she realized who had designed this house, she told me it was like meeting her professional hero through his work." "And they have children. Mom would have loved that." "Two, Emma and Jack. They were measuring the reading nook to see if their bunk beds would fit." Dad's smile grew warmer. "Emma wants to be an architect too. She had a little notebook where she was sketching features she liked." I could almost hear Mom's delighted laughter at that detail. She had always lamented the lack of female representation in her field. I took a deep breath. "I think Mom would approve of them." Dad nodded. "I believe she would." In that moment, among the physical evidence of my mother's creative life, I finally began to understand. Mom's legacy wasn't the house itself, but the love, care, and intention she had poured into creating it. Those qualities would live on in my memories, in Dad's stories, and now in the appreciation of a new generation. The house would change inevitably. The Harpers would make it their own, adapting spaces to their family's needs. But the core of what Mom had created, its bones, its relationship to the land, its thoughtful integration with nature, would endure. And perhaps that was enough. The final walkthrough of our empty house was both painful and cathartic. Dad and I moved from room to room, each of us lost in our own memories, occasionally sharing stories that made us laugh or cry or both. In the kitchen, I ran my hand along the island's edge, remembering homework sessions supervised by Mom as she prepared dinner. Remember how she used to say she designed this island as command central for family life? Dad smiled. She calculated the exact height so it would be comfortable for all three of us, even as you grew. Not too high for a child, not too low for adults. The empty living room echoed with the ghosts of Christmas mornings and family movie nights. The master bedroom, stripped of furniture, still held the peaceful quality Mom had designed into it with its perfect proportions and soft northern light. In my old bedroom, I stood in the reading nook for the last time, remembering the countless hours I'd spent curled up with books under the skylight Mom had positioned to provide perfect reading light. She spent 3 days calculating the exact angle and size of that skylight, Dad said from the doorway. She wanted it to provide natural light for reading even on cloudy days without creating glare on the pages. Such thought, such care, such love, built into every detail. How could I bear to let strangers take possession of these spaces so intimately connected to our family story? But as we continued our farewell tour, I began to see something else. An empty house waiting for new life. The rooms felt expectant rather than sad, as if they were anticipating fresh voices and new memories. We had already packed what truly mattered. Mom's architectural drawings and journals were carefully preserved in archival boxes. The family photos that had lined the hallway were wrapped and stored. Small mementos that held particular significance. A doorknob from her first major project, the compass she used throughout her career. The river stones she had collected to inspire the home's color palette were distributed between Dad's new apartment and my city loft. The structure remained, but the essence of our family had already been distilled into these precious objects and the memories we carried. On moving day, I helped Dad transport the last of his belongings to Willow Creek. The 2-bedroom apartment was indeed much smaller than our family home, but the community offered amenities that would make his life easier: a dining room for residents, maintenance staff, transportation services, and most importantly for Dad, no stairs to navigate with his bad knee. As we arranged his furniture, I was struck by how much more at ease he seemed in this more manageable space. The burden of maintaining Mom's architectural masterpiece had clearly been crushing him, though he had never complained. "You know," he said as we unpacked his books, "this is the first time in 5 years I haven't woken up with a knot of anxiety about house maintenance or bills." That simple statement confirmed we had made the right decision, painful though it was. Later that afternoon, we drove past our old house one last time. The Harpers were moving in their children, darting excitedly between stacks of boxes on the lawn. Lisa Harper stood on the porch, directing movers, her expression a mixture of stress and joy that seemed appropriate for such a momentous day. She spotted our car slowing and waved, then jogged down to the sidewalk when Dad pulled over. "We just wanted to wish you well in your new home," Dad said, rolling down his window. Lisa smiled warmly. "Thank you for entrusting us with it. I promise we'll honor the original design while making it work for our family." "My mother would have wanted the house to be lived in, not preserved like a museum," I said, surprising myself with how easily the words came. Lisa's expression turned thoughtful. "We found something interesting yesterday when the movers were bringing in Emma's desk. There's a small mark on the inside of the reading nook frame. It looks like handprints pressed into the wood before the finish was applied." My breath caught. That would be Mom and me. She let me put my handprints there when I was 12, right before the finishing carpenter sealed it. She said it was our secret signature on the house. "Would you like to show Emma sometime? She'd love to hear stories about the house from someone who grew up in it." The invitation was unexpected, but somehow perfect, a bridge between past and future, between Mom's original vision and this new chapter for her creation. "I'd like that," I replied, meaning it. 6 months later, I took Lisa up on her invitation. The house had changed in subtle ways, new paint colors, different furniture arrangements, but the bones remained exactly as Mom had designed them. Lisa had even found some of Mom's original sketches in the attic and had them professionally framed in the entry hallway, a tribute to the home's creator. Emma, their daughter, followed me from room to room, notebook in hand, asking insightful questions about why certain features had been designed as they were. Her genuine interest in architecture and in Mom's vision was both touching and healing. "Your mom must have been really smart to design such a cool house," she said as we explored the reading nook that was now her favorite spot too. "She was," I agreed, "and she would be happy knowing another future architect is enjoying this space." That visit marked a turning point in my grief journey. Seeing the house alive with a new family, hearing children's laughter echo through the spaces Mom had created, I finally understood what she had meant in her letter. The physical structure was important, yes, but it was the love and memories it contained that constituted her true legacy. Back in my city apartment, I began a new photography project documenting women architects and their work. Mom's influence guided my artistic choices as I captured not just the buildings these women had created, but the stories and intentions behind their designs. Dad's health improved dramatically once he was freed from the physical and financial burden of maintaining the house. His knee replacement surgery, finally scheduled, gave him back mobility he had lost years ago. We established a tradition of weekly dinners, rebuilding our relationship on new ground. The exhibition that resulted from my architectural photography project garnered attention in the design community. I titled it "Foundations Women Architects and Their Legacies," featuring Mom's work prominently alongside other pioneering female designers. At the opening, surrounded by images of Mom's creations and the women architects she had influenced, including, somewhat surprisingly, Lisa Harper, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced since before Mom's illness. Her house, her physical legacy, had moved into new hands. But her true legacy, her creativity, her determination, her love lived on through me, through the photos and drawings we had preserved, and through the inspiration she continued to provide to others. I began renovating my own apartment, incorporating elements of Mom's design philosophy while developing my own aesthetic. The process felt like a conversation with her across time, honoring her influence while establishing my independent vision. Standing in what had once been our family home's garden, now thoughtfully maintained by the Harpers, I finally understood what Mom had meant by family first. It wasn't about physical spaces or possessions. It was about the connections between people, the love that transcended physical structures, the memories that remained even when the setting changed. Home, I realized, wasn't the house my mother built, magnificent though it was. Home was the foundation of love she had established, the values she had instilled, the strength she had fostered in Dad and me. That foundation would support us wherever we went, whatever changes life brought. The house would stand for decades, perhaps centuries, sheltering family after family within its thoughtfully designed spaces. But Mom's true masterpiece wasn't built of wood and stone. It was built in the hearts and minds of those she loved and who loved her in return. As I watch my father flourish in his new community and feel my own creative voice strengthening, I know we've honored Mom's wishes in the most authentic way possible. We've put family first, not the building that once contained us, but the living, breathing connections between us. Have you ever had to let go of something precious to preserve something even more valuable? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this journey resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and share this video with someone who might need to hear that sometimes letting go is the most loving choice we can make. Thank you for listening. And remember that home isn't a place. It's the love we carry with us wherever we go.